All right. Good morning, everyone. Get started. As folks know, our agenda today may seem light, but it's actually very, very heavy. We're getting into the weeds of things, y'all, for A&F. All right. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Administrative and Finance Committee meeting for March 27th, 2025. Today's meeting is conducted in person with one board member, Director Leahy, participating remotely. This means she cannot touch my button because I'm up here and she's virtual. Our speaker button. Director Leahy has posted the agenda at her remote location, which is accessible to the public. With that, all voting will be via roll call vote. And as we discuss items on the agenda today, I will be calling on directors who push their speaker button, so please make use of that. And please limit your comments to matters that are not already addressed, and state all your points when you have a chance to speak so we can move through our agenda. Nicole, can you please call the roll?
Chair Abdullahi.
Present.
Vice Chair Arant. Vice Chair Yamani.
Here.
Directors Acosta. Boyd Hodgson.
Here.
Croucher.
Here.
Ike. Hilliker.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Norman.
Here.
Quaylen.
Here.
Serrano.
Here.
Vespi. Whitburn.
Here.
Chair Abdullahi, you have a quorum of the committee.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I do not have any additions to the agenda. At this time, I'd like to ask if there are any members of the public wishing to comment on any item listed on the Administrative and Finance Committee agenda.
If there are public speakers in the Zoom waiting room, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or press *9 if you are listening by phone. I see none.
All right, seeing and hearing none, I'll move on to the chair's report. And surprise, surprise, I have no chair's report. Are there any comments from our vice chairs? No? All right, any other? Wonderful. Let's move on to our agenda. This month's consent agenda includes staff recommendation to note and file the monthly treasurer's report using your speaker buttons. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? All right, so going by the speaker button, Nick has a comment. All right.
Oh, no. That's a motion.
All right, perfect. So motion by Chair Serrano and seconded by Vice Chair Arant, sorry. So moved by Director Serrano and second by Director Arant. Nicole, will you please call the roll?
Chair Abdullahi.
Yes.
Vice Chair Arant. Yes. Vice Chair Yamani.
Here. Yes.
Costa's absent. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Croucher.
Yes.
Ike is absent. Hilliker.
Yes.
Leahy.
Yes.
Norman.
Yes.
Quaylen.
Yes.
Serrano.
Yes.
Vespi.
Here.
It's consent calendar. You approve? Whitburn.
Yes.
Chair Abdullahi, items on the consent calendar pass.
Thank you so much. We have 4 items under our action, discussion, and presentation items today. And I will actually hand it over to Chair Serrano to make some opening remarks about our upcoming budget and rate cycle. Followed by Chair Serrano will be Dan Denham, our General Manager, who will make a few remarks before we turn it over to our staff, Liana White, our Budget and Treasury Manager, to present the fiscal year 2026 and 2027 General Manager's draft recommended budget. All right, Chair Serrano.
Thank you, Chair Abdullahi. Good morning, members of the committee and the rest of the Board of Directors. Thank you all so much for being here. As you all know, I have adjourned all other committees today in order to provide and facilitate a more direct focus on the fiscal year 2026 and 2027 budget. Since I joined this board almost 4 years ago, I have heard the calls from members about not stacking our agendas when we have these kind of substantive considerations in front of us. And so today is a recognition of that by adjourning all the other committees and agenda items in order to allow you all to deeply focus on the budget. Yes, it is also true that it is opening day for the San Diego Padres, and it should be a civic holiday. And half of you are probably headed to Petco at some point, which is in the city of San Diego, so thank you very much for your sales tax. Appreciate that. In either instance, you're welcome and go Padres. So today, just to be clear, today will consist of only the Administrative and Finance Committee and then formal board, which does also have some time-sensitive items docketed for us by staff, and so we will take those up then. But a programming note, I have asked staff to continue the facilities master plan item, which was docketed under action and discussion until next month. I know that there's been a lot of work that has gone into this, but I do want to give it the full consideration that it deserves, and so that will come to us next month. I want to start by framing today's conversation. This is the beginning of a long process, and what you will be presented with today is a draft, preliminary, early, initial, could be, might be, unfinalized, beginning stage budget based on older data that will be updated in the months ahead. Again, the numbers we are discussing today are preliminary and will change as we refine the budget over the coming months with board priorities. So this is not a final product, nor is it a proposal that this board is supporting at this point. So for all the reporters or members of the media who might be watching this, if you report that today's presentation reflects a water rate increase of any kind, that is not accurate. We are not setting rates today, nor are we deciding on a rate increase. This is the beginning of an evolving discussion. So over the next coming months, as I said, this budget will be updated with newer, more accurate information from member agencies. And I want to before I turn it over to the general manager, express my thanks and appreciation to the general manager and our entire Department of Finance team, who has been spending a lot of hours putting this together and have brought it for us for early consideration, so we can make sure that we have sufficient input from member agencies as we move forward. We have a lot of work ahead, but I'm confident that together, by challenging some of the general assumptions that we know and pushing for bold solutions, we can create a budget that reflects the fiscal responsibility that we know and also achieves the affordability that all of our residents deserve. I'd now like to turn the presentation over to our general manager, Dan Denham.
Good morning, everyone. I suppose I could start with, what he said. I wanted to give kind of just a general background on some things here at the Water Authority. I think we find ourselves in a place asking, how did we get here? And how we got here is really it's a buildup of things, and that's just some of the stuff that I kind of want to go through. Let's get into the first slide here. In terms of how we got into this financial situation that we're in, I think it goes without saying, and you all know that it's a buildup of decades worth of work. It did not happen overnight, but I think that we have responded appropriately over the past couple of years with nearly $500 million in mitigation activities for the budget and rate cycle. Just remember that we're in the second year of a 3-year plan, where we kind of look to having smooth and predictable rates by year 3 and beyond. That's at least the roadmap that we presented to the board last year. We took a big chunk out of that with the 14% rate increase last time around. And I would say that going forward through this budget and rate cycle, through this process, everything is going to be directed by the policy direction that we get from this board. Notwithstanding the initial operating budget tweaks that we've already made at a staff level, the slate is wide open as to how we can change things, how we want to do things differently. In many ways, we're picking up from where we left off last year. But I think that you all know I'm willing to do things differently, willing to think about this water space differently. And I look forward to that conversation with all of you going forward. So let's talk about how we got here. So I think when you start to talk about the Water Authority, whether it's internally, externally, with our state representatives, our federal representatives, the story's well known, and quite honestly, it's something that's coveted by many. And it's really based in this united regional response to drought in the 90s. And so I'm going to spare you with the once upon a time story, but I think that you all know what this agency has been grounded in since the 90s. I kind of have been reflecting a little bit on drought, and my kids are teenagers, and they have not lived through a drought. I mean, so think about that. 15-year-olds in this region, even arguably folks that are much older, or kids that are much older, in their 20s have not lived through a drought. I do remember growing up in the 90s and, you know, my parents telling me about shower times, about flushing toilets or not flushing toilets, quite literally. But we don't have that really these days. And I think that we all need to remember what a real good drought is like, because a real good drought is something that has, you know, devastating impacts to business, to labor, to our economy. So I say that just because what we've invested in started to pay dividends right away. The QSA in 2003, when we got to a point in the droughts of 2007, allocations to this region were originally slated for 13% curtailment in water. Because of the supplies that we had locally, we were able to bring that down to 8%. The droughts of 2014 and 2021, our water community in Southern California was facing curtailments at levels that we saw in the 90s. The Water Authority didn't experience any of that. This region didn't experience any of that. Part of that was because we had to fight for what we spent our money on in Sacramento. There was a one-size-fits-all approach to water use, and we fought that, and we prevailed. The investments that this community made, you can't tell this community to not use water and use their investments the way that they intended to. That's something that I think we should all keep in mind as we move forward with all of this. The transfer agreement was signed in 2003. The DSAL water purchase agreement in 2012. That has become sort of the economic base for a lot of things going forward for this region. I can't help but put the two headlines on the screen here. One from the 90s, the 50% water curtailment that we all face, and then how we were applauded just 3 years ago in terms of what we've done here in the region. 3 years ago, there are portions of Los Angeles and Ventura counties that were on one-day-a-week watering. That is the result of not having water or not having access to water. My peers, the general managers in the Southern California water space, elected officials, mayors in Los Angeles, their reaction was similar to what ours was back in the 90s. How could this happen? Never again. What are we going to do differently? And I would tell you that across the board, all of those agencies are now embarking upon some things that we did 20 years ago. That's our economic base, quite honestly, for this region in terms of water supply. Next slide, please. And this is the result of that. I think you all have seen this debt stack, and each color really in this debt stack sort of represents an era of decision making. You see a little red piece in there. That's debt from 1998. The investments that we've made over time are long-lasting. This agency cannot maintain infrastructure on a cash basis. The scope of what we do, you have to issue debt. What you see in this debt stack is $1 billion worth of local surface water storage. It's pipeline relining. It's the canal lining projects from the Imperial Valley. It's portions of the transfer agreement. It's the Twin Oaks Valley Water Treatment Plant and water use efficiency investments. I show this because this is the mortgage payment. This is your rent, right? This is what we've done, and this is what we're living with, and this is what we're going to have to tweak going forward as to how we change things financially here at the Water Authority. Next slide, please. So I want to kind of take a step back and talk about securing the QSA water. The QSA water, initially, almost overnight, we doubled the cost of our imported water supply from Metropolitan. It was an intentional move from this region to go from roughly $250 an acre foot up to $400 an acre foot overnight. This agency, this region, faced a lot of criticism over that. Many people framed it as a foolish move. We lived with that for the better part of a decade. We always did it with the idea that over time, the cost of that water would not increase at a pace of new local water supply development. The QSA water, the canal lining water, you have a 110-year agreement for the canal lining water. It's about $30 an acre foot. The transfer water is about $800 an acre foot. Those together are about $600. Today, you cannot find water for $630 or $800 an acre foot. All the cheap water in this region is gone. Whether you're talking about desal or reuse, all the cheap water is gone. I keep mentioning the economic base of this region. That is it. Flipping that equation would cause damage that I don't think that anyone in this boardroom would be willing to accept. You don't trade out $3,000 water with $600 water. That was a strategic move that we made, and it paid off. It paid off in terms of the reliability, and it paid off in terms of the cost. One thing that we didn't really anticipate, or could not have anticipated, was the cost to move that water into this region. And it caused what you all know that many of us have lived through for nearly the past 15 years, which is a dispute with Metropolitan. I'll continue to say that I think that initially we embarked upon this with an eye towards affordability. It was bringing in, or what we received from phase one was $100 million from successful litigation on one component of the rate case. That $100 million was given back to the member agencies. Also is the water stewardship charge, which was part of that litigation. That charge was deemed illegal. It went away. It will never be part of a transportation cost. And long term, it's billions of dollars worth of savings on some of these 110-year contracts that we have with the Imperial Valley. What came with that was absolute collateral damage on our relationships in Southern California. That was the trade-off that we made. That collateral damage, I think that you all know, you've all experienced it at a personal level, whether conversations with your colleagues, folks in the water space. I don't need to describe that, but on an operational level, what it did was it put the Water Authority in a box. And it put us in a box within the confines of our relationships with others. It put us in a box in terms of operations and not having flexibility to move water around and really do some of the things that we're doing today in partnership with Metropolitan, in partnership with IID. I think the attitude has changed. You all know that, and I really do look forward to getting this settlement agreement done that we have with Metropolitan and charting a different path together. I think that path really is going to be rebalancing not only the Water Authority's resource mix. Metropolitan is in the same situation that we're in. Almost all public utilities are in this same situation. We are in a business cycle period where we're all facing not only general fund deficits, whether it's the city of San Diego, whether it's Los Angeles with $1 billion, we are all facing hard times. And this grip that the change has had upon us, I hope it's temporary, I believe it's temporary, but it's something that if you just look back 10, 15 years, and I'll show you this a little bit on a slide, this is a correction, this is correction period. It's no longer a disruption. I think that we've looked at things through the wrong lens in many ways for the past 5, 10 years, and we've kind of made a story up in our head collectively that some of this stuff is going to go away, and I don't think that much of it is going away, and it's time for us to recalibrate and move forward in a different way. The single biggest and most important driver, next slide, has to do with demands. Demands will determine how high or how low your rate is. What you see on the screen is a composite of regional demands. This is every member agency and the Water Authority's projections over time through the Urban Water Management Plan. You can see what we all predicted, and you can see where we all landed. We're off by quite a bit, and I will own that absolutely here as staff at the Water Authority. We've changed that. a little bit. Moving forward, we are making very, very conservative estimates as to what our demand looks like and what our sales look like. It should go without saying, however, when you do that, when you are ultra conservative, when you underproject sometimes your sales, your rates go up. Rates are in double digits because we are now at the baseline of where we think we should be, not somewhere different. All the things that you have listed on the screen there, hardwired conservation, state regulations, I kind of alluded to this a little bit, economic upheavals, COVID. Remember during the COVID years, we needed to raise rates, and we didn't. We did it. We made a regional decision here to not raise rates because of the situation our friends and families were in, and all of us included. That was in many forms and similar to how the demand projections are. It put things off, and we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And a lot of what we did was we used the Rate Stabilization Fund and the $500 million that I referenced previously to get us through that time. I think you all have heard, and you will hear throughout this process, the Rate Stabilization Fund is at its lowest levels that it's been in years. So the ability to mitigate some of this stuff, the tools that we have, really have gone away. I say that because a lot of this was planned, but a lot of it was unplanned. Detachment was an unplanned event. That occurred over a 2-year period. Local water supply development, the reuse projects in our region, they came online, or at least were approved by governing boards in 2014. We tried to plan for those financially. That plan to help mitigate the roll-off of some of these projects, that Rate Stabilization Fund money got sucked up in COVID relief. It got sucked up in 2 years worth of wet weather that put us in a position where now the fund is low, and we need to take actions to move it in a different manner. Next slide, please. I talked a little bit about business cycles. This is San Diego, or the Water Authority's rates, Metropolitan's rates. They track pretty closely. That over the past 10 years, they have been relatively smooth. But as I described in the previous slide, the mindset was probably not towards acknowledging some of the disruptors that we had over at least the past 5 to 8 years. Again, I think that those are in fact market corrections, and this is emblematic of, I think, the business cycle for all of us in the public utility space. 14% rate increases last year, hard to stomach. There's rate fatigue. I certainly understand that. Look back to some of the time periods just 10, 15 years prior. The rates go up, they go down, and they're a reflection of the times that we're in. And I would just like for all of you to keep that in mind as we start deliberating over these rates. I want to talk about the $500 million response to rate pressures. These are unplanned, really, items that our finance team and this board has allowed us to do in light of a relatively low rate stabilization fund. The $78 million draw is first and foremost what I would like to highlight. Returning the $91 million in litigation proceeds to our member agencies, that was the direction of this board. Candidly, $91 million goes a long way towards defeasing debt, right, towards mitigating rates. That was the direction of this board, and the money was given back to the member agencies. We've done some other things over the years, or past couple years, with the water transfers. The $40 million that we've been able to bring in has shaved 6% off of rates. We've continued to defease debt and do other things like securing grant funds for the desal plant and the San Vicente Energy Storage Project. Just to kind of start to wrap things up here, next slide, please. In terms of the budget priorities, I would say again that this is all going to be driven by board policy. We've had a couple presentations now on our financial policies and how we can tweak and maneuver things. This staff, this finance team, is open to looking at things differently, charting a different course. We need to do it through this boardroom. We're going to make sure that whatever we do, we're going to give you the pros and cons on a tweak to any financial policy, to any capital improvement project or program. We want to maintain our strong financial metrics. That's going to be important. But I think that we also understand that the situation that we're in terms of rate relief in the immediate short term, that may have to cost us in the long term if that's the direction of the board. We're going to be in the market here in a year or so. And so anything we do today is going to happen or is going to impact us in the years and months to come. I'm going to lean pretty heavily on my peers over the next 3 months and arguably over the next 2 years. We have created a member agency manager business model work group. We have to find consensus in that group. We have to find a way to get the public utilities directors, the general managers in one room and find some policy direction for this board. My intent is to come back with what we talk about, whether that's rate structure design, long-term financial issues at the Water Authority, and broader business model discussions. I want to be able to bring that back to all of you to have a conversation about as we move forward over the next 2 years and try to stabilize the rate situation that we have here at the Water Authority. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the initial cuts that we've made, the tweaks that we've made on the operating side of the house. This is an overall 1% budget increase going forward. A lot of this stuff that you're going to hear over the next several months, the operating costs being driven by the collective bargaining agreement that we have with Teamsters, CalPERS funding, and some non-discretionary expenses that we have. Despite all of that, whose increases are quite significant, we're looking at a 1% overall increase. The capital program, at this point, we're basing everything off of data-driven decision-making. And that's largely our asset management program. I have explained to you, I think that Martin and our O&M team has explained to you about our acoustic fiber optic network. We have the ability to predict wire breaks, predict catastrophic failure, and that is the majority of our CIP. Unless there's a direction from this board to change that level of infrastructure maintenance, that's what the base budget reflects. We're going to continue to focus on cost control and revenue generation. But again, I will tell you that we're early in this process and everything is going to be driven by water sales. And that water sales data is coming in real time. And over the next several months, it's going to change a couple times. So with that, I believe Leanna is up to talk about budget and kick off this process for us.
Good morning. I'm not sure I want to follow Chair Serrano and General Manager Denham, but here we are. So, good morning, Chair Abdullahi, members of the committee and the board. I'm going to be giving a brief overview on the draft recommended budget, and this can be found on page 16 of your packet, and the document itself, the draft recommended budget document, can be found on page 19. So where have we come from? Over the last several weeks, we've been working on development of the 26 and 27 budget. In January, I gave a presentation to solicit input and feedback from the Board of Directors for 26 and 27 budget development. I did review some fiscal year 24 and 25 accomplishments, and you just heard some information from Dan, but you will also be hearing more about the accomplishments in the coming weeks in April and at the workshops. And I also, so factors impacting 26 and 27, Dan did just review some of those, but we are looking at equity and affordability for ratepayers. We do have the asset management and system reliability that we need to focus on for the CIP. We are looking at legislation and outreach at the local, state, and federal levels, and then evaluating the economic and financial pressures. There are tariffs, potential inflation, talking about a potential recession, but we are working closely with our financial advisors and our investment manager. And then 2 weeks ago, we gave a draft recommended budget distributed out to the board for your review prior to this meeting. So what are our cost drivers for 26 and 27? Water purchases and treatment costs are about 62% of the total expenses for 26 and 27. And these will be refined and revised as we work through the rates and charges process, and you will hear more about rates in a few minutes from Pierce. Debt service obligations are projected to increase in 26 and 27 as we forecasted out a new money issuance to support the CIP costs in 26 and 27. And then operating departments are a significant increase. They're projected to increase 15%. I will review that more in a few minutes. So, as Dan mentioned, we're looking at a 1% increase overall from the prior two-year budget. 91% of our expenses are for water purchases, treatment, debt service, and the CIP. We're looking at cost control and revenue generation for 26 and 27. And we're going to be addressing comments and questions received from the board and member agencies and the public as we continue throughout this process. But we want to ensure that we're looking at water exchange agreements and transfers. We're aggressively applying for state and federal grants. We're investigating new revenue opportunities and reassessing any long-term water contracts. You heard from the general manager. How can we change things? What can we do different? Our projected revenues for 26 and 27, water sales is the biggest component at 85%, which is a 9% increase from 24 and 25. Again, the numbers will be refined. They are preliminary. And then we do have some decreases in various categories. The Build America bonds and investment income is projected to decrease. Capacity charges, standby availability charges, and then the other category down at the bottom are all projected to decrease over the next 2 years. For expenditures, as I mentioned, 91% of the total budget is water purchases and treatment, debt service, and CIP. Of all the categories, debt service is projected to increase 13%, and the operating departments is projected to increase 15%, and the CIP expenditures are going to remain relatively flat with just a small increase of about $6,000. For the CIP, for fiscal years 26 and 27, the current projection is the $183.87 million. 85% of the CIP expenditures will be for asset management projects, which will include pipeline relining and replacement, infrastructure rehabilitation, and other smaller projects, which include flow control facilities. As part of the budget information for April and the workshops, we will be providing project details, a full list, and their associated two-year projections. This will be further detail than the information that's provided in the project summary table in the draft budget document, which is on page 48 of your packet. The May recommended budget information will also include individual project sheets that will be categorized and into groups with the detailed information for each project. Asset management is the largest component of the CIP projections. At 85%, 75% of those projections for asset management is pipelines. We have a large pipeline system. And then we also do have some smaller components, flow control facilities, pumping and hydroelectric facilities. The pumping and hydroelectric facilities, the costs there are associated primarily with Rancho Penasquitos. Operating departments, 15% increase overall, or $20.3 million. As the general manager mentioned, we do have the forecasted increases for fiscal years 26 of the approved salary schedules that are in the MOU. And then we do have increase in the employer contribution rates for CalPERS. The current rate is 34.86%, and in fiscal year 26, it's forecasted to increase over 3%. And then increase again in fiscal year 27. And we do have some modest increases in services, utilities, and insurance. I would like to note that the labor and benefits increases is 77% of this total increase to operating departments. So to summarize the budget and rates development schedule, we're here today presenting the budget and rates to the board of directors. And in April, we will have further detailed information for the committee and the board. And then we'll move right into the workshops where we'll provide detailed information on all categories of the budget, including water sales, debt service, and CIP in the operating departments. And we'll include a rates component to the workshops as well. And then we'll do a recommended budget document for the board and discussions in May, and then consideration for adoption in June. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Leanna. Are there any questions or comments from directors? There's ample opportunity in the schedule that we do have and the time that we have today for us to kind of dive deep into this. So are there any questions or comments from directors? All right, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm new. This is my third board meeting, so forgive me if I'm asking a pedantic question. But, you know, in my first meeting, I mentioned that I would like to see more data behind if we, you know, what the scenarios might look like or what the analyses might look like if we had some kind of scheduled drawdown from receiving 85% of our revenues from water sales. I wonder if that analysis has been done, if there is some kind of trajectory that could help us as a board understand if we had, you know, several scenarios that play out if we reduced water sales as a point of revenue by, you know, from 85 to 75 to 65 over time, how that might impact rates. I hope I'm making myself clear, but I haven't seen anything like that. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I wonder if it does, and if it doesn't, what would be the process for that information to get passed to the board? Thank you.
So I can start with an answer on that. A lot of that has been done in the past. We have had conversations in our financial strategy work group, the member agency manager rate work group. We can take a look back at some of that, at what we've done. I think that moving forward, we'll be doing even more of that in this member agency manager business model work group, and all of that should come back to the board in the short term.
All right, Director Freehoff.
Hi, thank you. I am not a member of the committee. I appreciate an opportunity to talk. Dan, I appreciated your background on where we are. I think that's very helpful, and how we got to where we are, I guess. But even more important, though, I think is looking forward and what we're going to do in the forward to change the Water Authority's business model. So I was pleased to see that under your priorities, you did mention the member agency business model work group. And I'm hoping that the budget we see in April really reflects the actions that the staff is going to be taking to evaluate and implement a change in our business model. I don't want to see a status quo, board document. I want to see something that very much articulates all the resources, where are resources and staff. We don't need more, but how are we going to reallocate our resources to really look at changing the Water Authority's business model in the long term. I think that's going to be very important. I liked what I saw in regards to, I think it was on slide 14, on focus on cost control and revenue examples on slide 14. I think that's going to be very important. Again, I'd like to see, come April, how we're going to approach those, how we're going to attack those and achieve those. I think it'd be very important because I think this, again, as you mentioned in your message to us, the general manager's message that came with this budget, that we aren't going to accomplish this in this one budget cycle, but I sure want to see that we're taking steps to make those changes. I don't want to status quo, again, budget. So again, I appreciate it. I think you are going to be looking forward, but I think the budget needs to reflect that. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Director Norman?
Thank you, Chair. My questions follow a little bit along the same line. When you talk about revenue generation, I'd like more information about what does that really entail, how likely is that, and projections of that revenue generation in which areas based on our policy decisions. And also the grants. I mean, to me, we don't know where we're going with grants, and I would like to understand what is a reasonable expectation of grants and how that affects the budget vis-a-vis the actual budget priorities, not getting grants because they're available for something that may not be a high priority for us, really being targeted with how we go about grants. So those would be comments I would be looking to have some answers on. Thanks.
All right, Director Croucher.
Well, thank you. And one of the things, Daniel, that you didn't bring up that I think is important for everybody to realize is the decision-making process that this board went through during the different times of drought and impacts and what the outside influences were, one of which were our studies by our consultants and stuff. But beyond that, for example, in the 2010-2011 grand jury report that talked about the need, it talked about high rates, and high rates were going to continue. And it also looked at the CWA wholesale retailer rates increased by 11.3% to local retailers this year, but that the local retailers did not pass those on to its ratepayers. So just there's a lot of things impacting it. I agree with Director Freehoff in regards to it's one thing to look at the past, but let's look towards the future. I 100% agree with that, but we also need to learn from the past. And one thing from my firefighting career has been that no matter what we do, we can never outsmart Mother Nature. And that's one of the things that we continue to learn today. As much science and as much data, every time we think we have something figured out, there's another curveball thrown. So it's just knowing that those curveballs are going to continue to come at us, knowing that we're prepared for those, knowing that we live in a desert and we're being impacted by that, and that does impact our rates, and it goes beyond that as far as environmental impacts and other things. But can you go to slide 4 for a second? And that's the end of my comments, and this is more towards a question. In regards to the infrastructures that we've put in and seeing those factors reduce, especially in 2035, 2039, continuing to go on, do we have funding, although the bonds and the rates or the loans that we've had go down in terms of debt, do we have financial considerations built in there for the maintenance of these systems? For example, the State Water Project that was first done, they're now needing maintenance funds, and they're looking at how they're going to fund that. Yes, the debt goes away, but what are we doing to plan for the maintenance of that as well?
I think a short answer for that, and I would look towards staff to help out with this, but the CIP that we have is asset management driven, and if it continues to be the focus built into all future CIP and all future debt issuances will be that. So it's just a matter of tweaking what level of what level we want our asset management program on heading into the future.
Okay, and I guess the question is more towards, as the debt issuance goes away, and it's not going to be debt issuance based, and it's your normal day-to-day maintenance, at that point, where is that funding coming from? Is that taken into account?
Yeah, the day-to-day, the operations, that hits the operating side. But, I would just say this, and I alluded to this earlier, a public utility of this size is never going to be debt-free. That's not the nature of this business. The alternative would be to fund everything on a cash basis. When you fund capital improvement projects on a cash basis, rates go up accordingly. This level of debt is significant, it is, but it also has a generational component to it. And so I think that's important in anything we do as we have the conversation about debt.
Okay, and I'm getting away from the debt side of it, more towards the maintenance, ongoing maintenance side of it. I'm just asking if our rates consider the maintenance cost aspect of it not coming from debt.
Yes.
Perfect. That answers it. Thank you.
Director Croucher, thank you for putting me in the right direction. Yes, all of our maintenance is funded through rates, not debt.
All right, Director Whitburn.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will pile on and say how much I appreciated the initial presentation. I thought that was really important and useful. I do remember a couple of years ago when our region had water and other parts of Southern California did not. It was a point of pride for our region that we were able to sustain ourselves. Obviously, we're in a different environment now, and I think affordability has risen to the top of what's in front of everybody's mind. So I appreciate the focus on that. I appreciate the more conservative sales forecasts that you've brought forward. As we go through this, I will be a strong advocate for bringing budgeted costs down. We're going through that at the city. It's not easy, it's difficult, but it's necessary there, and I think it's necessary here. I did have one question just in terms of water purchases. Could you shed some light on our purchase of treated water as opposed to our treating water ourselves at a lower price and how we make that decision?
Eva, do you want to come up and talk about treated water purchases and how that works?
As far as treated water versus treating water ourselves, we treat water at the Twin Oaks Water Treatment Plant. And at full capacity, if we're to supply water to our region at full capacity of the plant is very efficient and our cost is substantially lower than what we pay Metropolitan for their treatment surcharge. Unfortunately, the demands fluctuate on the plant, so that the lower the demand on the plant, the higher the costs are per unit. And it varies year by year depending on what the costs are.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Vespi?
Thank you. Good morning. Also want to say thank you for the presentation. It's really appreciated to start the process as early as we're starting. The question I have is going to go away from the slides and into the budget document itself. On page 13, there's a pretty extensive or detailed table, and there's a couple lines in there that I have questions about. The question really generates from the storage use / add line. In fiscal year 26, there's an add, if I understand it correctly, of 40,000 or 39,000 and change acre feet to storage. But then in fiscal 27, that storage add drops to 977 acre feet. And it looks like the change there is really the IID line dropping from 227 to 172,000 acre feet. Could you help us understand what's at play there?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Pierce Rossum. I'll have some slides on this as well, because this is something that is unique to the situation we have. Typically, we get our QSA on equal installments from Metropolitan. However, due to operational conditions and shutdowns, we've modified our delivery schedule. And so we'll receive more water during times when the pipelines are shut down, we receive less water. And so that's kind of what you're seeing from an operational standpoint, is just us pulling more water temporarily, putting it into storage, and drawing down that storage level during, as the QSA schedule gets right-sized. And there's kind of a calendar year, the deliveries are the same, but on a fiscal year basis, you're going to have some ups and downs that are being reflected as in the table.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to Director Leahy.
Thank you. I did have a couple questions, and then I'll start with the questions, and then I just have a couple requests of staff for the budget. So first, just looking at the capital budget, it doesn't look like this is the comprehensive list that's been requested, and it's just what's included in this 2-year budget. So I did want to ask our Chief Operating Officer if you can commit to when you can provide that to the board as been requested month over month. Is there a date in which we can expect to see the comprehensive capital program, including what's not budgeted but for future years, so that we can make sure that this is being prioritized and we're hitting all the best projects that we need to?
Thank you, Director Leahy. Yes, I can answer that. At this juncture, we're looking at providing a detailed project list in April at the April board meeting.
Thank you. On page 24 of the budget, draft budget, I will say, so that no one is misquoting us, it looks like it's discussing the full-time positions within the organization. I wanted to ask, what has been the vacancy rate? How many positions have been vacant over the last few years? I know when we looked at this budget 2 years ago, there were positions that were being requested to add, but there were existing vacancies that we were unable to fill some of those positions. So over the last 2 fiscal years, what has been the vacancy rate of the organization?
I'll start with an answer, and then I'm going to ask Leanna if she knows the details. As directed by the board, we have kept 5 positions vacant during the duration of this budget to generate cost savings that were directed during the last budget process. With regard to the actual vacancy rate, I know that has been dropping as we've been filling positions. Leanna, do you have any specifics to answer Director Leahy's question?
The vacancy rate averages around 5%, but we can confirm that. We're also going to have a presentation by Human Resources in the coming months on Water Authority vacancies.
Thank you.
And then I know specifically, thank you for that. I know specifically the engineering department in the prior 2-year budget, so 2 to 4 years ago, there were about, I think, 4 or 6 positions that we were unable to fill, and yet we added 4 additional engineering positions. Are all of the engineering positions full at this time? Because I do see that in the budget we're proposing adding another engineer. And so I wasn't sure if those were the positions that were kept vacant, or if they've all been filled at this time.
Thank you. I'll answer that. We're filling all of our positions within engineering. As they become vacant, we're filling them. They are needs from a position standpoint, work standpoint. With regard to the additional position, we used a vacant position that was vacated in another area within the organization to create a position in response to workload requests from this board with regard to additional details on CIP.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't just adding positions that we weren't able to fill. I know engineers are a rare commodity nowadays. And then just another question on positions. So if we've kept 5 positions vacant, in the next 2-year budget, are we anticipating to fill those 5 positions? So is that part of the increase in personnel budget in this forecasted budget? Or are we planning to keep those vacant?
The plan is to have all positions filled.
Thank you. I did want to. I'm probably done with my questions at this point, but for my comments, the operating budget, kind of same day, same comment, or new day, same comment. The operating budget as a whole continues to be 10% underspent, and yet we're adding 1% increase to that. I would ask that our executive staff take a look at that and try to get that closer to a 5% deficit. Rather than continuing to add to our operating budget. I believe that Oceanside, as well as other member agencies, have not experienced a decrease in service from the Water Authority. So I think cutting that would not necessarily be excess. There seem to be some inconsistencies between the budget for water sales and what was presented in the financial forecast. So I'd ask that be aligned, and then if there are differences in what was just presented in the 5-year financial forecast to what our current budget year sales are, that we identify those. but there are a lot of inconsistencies between documents in this draft budget, the staff report, and then other documents that have been provided. And then on our favorite debt chart, it does show the pay down of our debt. I understand how debt works. I know that we're going to continue to issue debt in this organization, but it does not show the 2026 anticipated addition to this debt program. It also doesn't show any forecasted debt that is going to occur through 2049, which is shown on this table. So I think knowing that the organization probably has the anticipated capital program budgeted out and modeled, we probably also have the forecasted debt issuances, including that in 2026 and then future years through 2049. So I think it would be great to be able to forecast and show this board what this looks like, because showing that it's going to continue to be paid down might be a little misleading. So I'd like to see what that forecasted debt issuance through this display would look like. And those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Chair Abdullahi, if I may. The debt service, so what you see up on the screen is part of what brought us here, and that's the actual debt service that we currently have. The debt service component will be detailed out in the workshops in April, and so we will have those forecasted debt issuances.
Thank you so much. Vice Chair Yamani?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just wanted to appreciate the mitigating factors that our general manager had mentioned, cost control and revenue generation, and aggressively applying for grants. I just want to focus on page 22 of the draft budget, table 6. I just wanted to see a more detailed budget report on line items such as others. What are those? And then if we look at the bottom line, because I'm kind of a bottom line person, look at the grand total from last year, 133, to a recommended 153. That's still a 20 million, 15% increase. I would like for us to revisit that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Ray?
Thank you. I'd like to first thank staff. I know that that's a heavy lift every year to create this, or every other year to create this budget. Again, in the work paper, the draft budget, just some things I'm a little confused on. On page 11, it shows the fixed charges, storage, customer service, supply, reliability, and transportation. And it has numbers listed there for placeholder for 2026. I do understand that this is a draft budget, but if you look on page 12, those same costs, or they're different. They're the same items, but they're different numbers. And the difference between the two numbers is $10.3 million. What's listed on page 11 is $10.3 million higher than what's listed on page 12. So I just would like to know what why they're different. It's the same information. It should match. Also, Director Leahy mentioned the debt, and while I can appreciate that a organization of this size cannot be debt-free, I have brought up in the past in a different forum that there seems to be debt that we keep refinancing and refinancing. 5-year debt we don't pay off, seems to be that we make interest-only payments. I think that we should maybe in our new business model visit a policy or something that we start kind of paying off this debt and not refinancing. You're never going to get out from under debt if you don't make some sort of an effort to pay it down and not just refinancing it into lower rates. Eventually, Dan, you made mention of, it's your mortgage payment, right? Well, eventually your mortgage payment is paid off. And I think that The only other item that I'd like to, the two other items, sorry, you have a pie chart in regards to the different expense categories, that's, the budget categories. I think that it might be helpful for people to see that, a lot of times we focus on staffing and if we can save costs in staffing. And I'd like to see that expense pie chart spell out exactly how much this agency spends for salaries and benefits associated with those salaries, including, the PERS costs, the all-in amount that we spend on a 2-year annual basis for salaries and benefits. And I think it'll help people understand that it's a really, in the whole picture, significantly low amount. And the rate stabilization funds, while I understand that this board has adopted a minimum amount of rate stabilization funds that we have to have, staff often refers to the fact that our credit rating is dependent upon keeping those rate stabilization funds at a certain level. And if that's the case, and we can't really draw from those rate stabilization funds in order to help smooth rates over time, then maybe we should rename those to something else. Because to me, a rate stabilization fund should be employed in times that we need to employ it and not being restricted from being used because we have to have those funds in order to keep a good credit rating. And that's just my opinion. But if you could maybe give me some answers at the April meeting on the differences on certain costs that seem to be, and throughout the budget document, different amounts when it's the same items, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Director Myers?
Thank you. I'm not a member of this committee, and thank you for the opportunity to make a few comments. Mostly, I just wanted to thank General Manager Denham for his introduction and also the staff presentation. I'm very supportive of this approach that the staff and General Manager have in going through this process, and especially the initiation of the General Manager Business Model Group. I think that is appropriate way for us to go through the process, to try to vet through the various ideas that the various parties may have, and hopefully come up relatively quickly with a policy position and alternatives that will come to the board for further discussion. So I look forward to those reports, and I look forward to all the efforts that are being made. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just want to take a moment before we move on to the next item to thank the directors for your robust comments. And I think this is really, really important for our discussion moving forward. And we have actually one more speaker, Vice Chair Arendt.
Dan, could you address this issue for me? We have a budget before us for the coming 2 fiscal years. That's great. But as I understand what your intention was with the General Manager's work group, specifically addressing the business model, was to come up with some longer-term structural solutions to the Water Authority's financial conditions. Did you intend that things that come out of our next Friday meeting are going to be incorporated in this budget? Or was it my understanding, and hopefully you can clarify, was that the GMs would look at longer-term structural issues such as financial resources, sources of revenue, shifting more of our revenues away from commodity-based revenues to fixed revenues, and truly fixed revenues, not the ones we have right now, which are not fixed. So could you clarify that? Because I think there's a misunderstanding about what people think we're going to come up with, as I've got my GM hat on right now, over the next month or so. Or 2 months.
Thank you, Director Rant. Your assumption is correct. The work group is chartered with a long-term view of rate design here at the Water Authority and other elements related to our business model in general. I think that's probably about a 2-year process. But that still being said, I believe that we will, not I believe, we will have conversations related to this budget process. We have to do that. We have to create the space for that conversation. And so in this first meeting that we have, we will go over some of the more technical elements of this budget and rate cycle, and we'll continue to do that in the member agency manager meetings that we have once a month. We will attempt to carve out an hour of the 2-hour meeting to focus on budget and rates, just to provide a space for that conversation that, you know, used to occur with the financial strategy work group. So I just want to make sure that the GMs have the opportunity to provide input, understand some of the finer details of the budget process, to then go back to all of you with positions or recommendations, insight, et cetera, going forward. But to get directly to your question, the intent of the work group is with a longer term view.
Director Crafter?
Yeah, just a question in regards to that working group. Are board members that are not general managers allowed to attend, not necessarily participate in, but allowed to observe those meetings?
No, we're going to keep this as a general manager only work group, and you know, we're not going to allow alternates either, at least for the time being. We need to have a very candid discussion amongst the GMs in this region as to where we head, what kind of roadmap we're on. I think it could eventually evolve into something a little bit different, but at least for the first couple meetings, I think it needs to be that peer-to-peer discussion.
Okay, and I'm fine with that for the first couple of meetings, but at some point in time, I think as a board member of this organization, that we're looking to general managers throughout that tend to look individually at their agencies versus the region. And this has come up, I mean, as far back as 2001 when there was general managers meetings that board members weren't allowed to attend. They'd kind of rescinded that and gotten back to where they were welcome. So at some point in time when it does get opened up, like I said, not for participation, but for observation, please let me know.
Director Freehoff?
Great. Thank you again for allowing me to comment. I appreciate Director Arant's clarification on the member agency work group. I appreciate him highlighting that. But I'm hoping this effort, Dan, is going to take a lot of resources, and it can't be all your time. There's got to be others. And so what I'm looking to the budget to see how you plan on allocating the resources necessary to accomplish all that we want to do in part of this work group. So I think there is something in there in the budget. Because you're going to have to work with the member agencies, implement this, and it's going to take more than just your time. So, I'd appreciate seeing that to make sure that we're serious about this effort, that you're going to commit the resources to it. On another completely different subject, we're talking about long-term debt. We're looking out, and Director Croucher asked the question regarding maintenance. So I know in about 10 years, the Carlsbad Desal project is going to be made available to us for $1. So at what point are we as a board going to start having those discussions in regards to what our position is going to be? And because that could bring along more maintenance costs out there and whatever it would be 10 years from now. So that's just something I'm just curious about, is when we're going to start having that conversation.
So per the water purchase agreement, one of the things that needs to occur first is, this is not the language in the agreement, but these are my words, a condition assessment of the plant, right? So you evaluate the plant and determine what it's worth, and you do that in anticipation, I think, of what you're saying when you take it over for $1. What's the condition of the plant and the ongoing costs? But there's also a component to that, again, my words, condition assessment, that involve purchasing the plant early, right? We've heard that a number of times over the years. So all of that is going to have to start occurring within the next few years.
All right. Thank you so much, Leanna, for the wonderful presentation. And staff, I will now hand it over to Good News Pierce, for our financial planning manager, to present the preliminary calendar year 2026 rates and charges.
Good morning. I will try to live up to that moniker, so thank you for that. We've been here For the Water Authorities does an annual rate setting process. We're going to frame it a little bit differently just from some of the other kind of paradigms that we've heard from this board over the last several months, several years. The Water Authority has a financial goal. We always have had a financial goal in terms of maintaining that strong credit rating. A strong credit rating, just like your personal credit rating at home, allows you to get a cheaper car payment, a cheaper house payment, and that has long-term savings. So that provides savings and financial stability. The next is our framework. From a rate perspective, we want to mitigate the ratepayer impacts. We want to mitigate the cost to our customers, but at the same time understand that we've got a large system, a regional system that we need to maintain. So that's the rate framework within the affordability lens. And then, of course, there's the operational goal. We need to have sufficient funds available to provide funding for ongoing operations, ongoing maintenance, and maintain that system reliability. All of that is then done under the guise of cost of service. We have to have a linkage between what the costs are and the service that's being provided. Does it adhere to board policies and legal standards? When we talk cost of service, we've all seen this before. This follows what you typically have at your home member agencies in terms of a rate process. You first identify the revenue requirements. How much revenue do we need to generate in order to cover our costs? At the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're not generating a profit. We're here to cover our costs. And so the costs can be everything from operations to debt service to capital needs and even the policy requirements of maintaining those reserves. We then take a look at how those costs are being incurred, and we allocate each of those costs line item by line item into functions, into services that are being provided. Is it a supply benefit or supply cost? Is it a supply or treatment cost, treatment service? And we break that down, and we have at the moment 5 rate and charge categories. Once we have the costs identified into individual cost buckets, we say what is the most appropriate way to collect those costs? Do we collect it volumetrically? So supply, as that cost is typically incurred from, we buy more water, we sell more water, that's a nice nexus to have a volumetric rate. On some things like storage or supply reliability that provide more than just a month-to-month or day-to-day benefit. It's a long-term benefit. Those are maybe beneficial on a long-term rolling average. And then the piece is what each of the member agencies end up paying in terms of your share that's reflecting of your metrics, your use of the system. And again, all of that is done by a third party. So the Water Authority prepares the analysis, but we always have an outside third-party review to make sure they're in alignment with industry standards, in alignment with policies, in alignment with where the industry is going. One of the things that is going to be a full review this cycle is the PSAR program. PSAR, for those that are new to the board and don't know that acronym, is the Permanent Special Ag Water Rate. And this was a program that was made permanent 5 years ago. And when that program was adopted, in the ordinance itself was language to come back and revisit the program in 5 years. How is the program working? What changes need to be made? How are we justifying the lower rate that is being provided to those ag customers? The ag rate is lower than our M&I rate, as it's referred to, our full service rate. But that's because it comes with a lower level of service. We need to make sure that lower level of service is still there, that interruptible rate is still interruptible, and we'll be performing that evaluation as part of this CY26 rate setting process, as well as ways to maybe make the program more easier to implement by the member agencies, less administratively burdened, and to open up the program to others as well. Leanna's provided this slide before, but it's one of our favorites throughout the rate setting cycle, is just when we take a look at where the expenses are coming from, it's largely water. It's the cost of buying that water and getting it here. It's the cost of storing that water. It's the investments that we've made. So 19% is our historical investments. Another 10% is our ongoing investment in the system. At the end of the day, we're really left with about 9% of the budget that is, the people doing the work to get the water to you. And so at the end of the day, that's really what we're looking at, and that, yellow piece of the pie is that operating department that's either staff here or services that provide the underlying service. Dan's covered this, so he stole my thunder. But we've done a lot year in, year out to maintain rates as low as possible, turning every stone, as we've turned a phrase before. This is what we do, and this is why we set rates annually. It's trying to get as close to the line as possible, the lowest rate possible, without impacting our ability to provide service and impacting the long-term effects of our ratings that have very significant and long-term cost implications. Director Vespi earlier mentioned storage and why that number kind of goes up and down. It's been a challenging year coming off of 2024. We were here last year, if you recall, and we were warning of very high increases. We had come off of 2 wet years in a row. We were looking at what our storage levels were anticipating in terms of if we continue to take the water we have coming in per that modified delivery schedule. If we have cool weather, wet weather, we're going to use almost all the capacity out of SANV. And you see that build, that sharp build that hasn't really been done before between June and July of 2024. A lot of that was us basically buying water early, receiving the water early, and not having a off-taker at the moment. So we stored 42,000 acre-feet of water in that calendar year at a cost of $48 million. $48 million left our coffers to purchase the water, and we put it into storage. Luckily, we've been able to, so far this fiscal year, we've been able to take out 42,000 acre-feet. So basically 1 for 1. We've done everything from an operational standpoint. We've been working very closely with the O&M team in terms of looking at our desal production, our QSA deliveries, everything to try to limit how much water we buy from Metropolitan, all of that to really get storage levels back in SANV to a level where if it does rain again next year, we have it because we've paid for this water already. We want to use it. When we take a look at another thing of our reserves, we talk about this roadmap. The roadmap is working. Last year, we had reserves that were below policy in terms of our 150 days of cash. When we look at where we are today, as of January, and this is in the controller's report, the 150 days target is now being exceeded. That is wonderful news from our standpoint because everything that we've done, all the various levers are working. And in terms of being good news, Pierce, I don't have to say, hey, we're not there yet, right? When we take a look at how we went from the green bar on the left to the green bar on the right year over year, there's notes on that call out box on the right, but really we're above there now for a number of reasons. One, the 9.5% increase that was effective for all of calendar 24. We had the upfront payment program that was piloted, and we had $32 million of money come in month 0, rather than being collected over the months 1 through 12. So that is that's pulling revenue forward and parking it in the operating reserve at a value of $32 million. We received $23 million worth of detachment or exit fees since January of 2024. This reflects $40 million worth of water deals that Dan was able to make and secure So that's $40 million in water reduction costs that buoy that operating reserve. And then again, we've sold water out of storage year over year at a benefit of $19 million. So things are looking better in terms of that operating fund and the financial position. We do have a large $90+ million debt payment here in April. That's always something that we keep in mind or keep an eye on. When you also look at the budget, you'll notice that our construction fund will now be fully depleted come probably at the end of this month. And then by the end of June of this year, we will be completely out of PAYGO funds. There's always PAYGO funds trickling in with capacity fees, but the operating fund will be looking to fully fund the ongoing CIP program, at least for the first 6-7 months of the next budget cycle until we're able to do that early 2026 debt issue. Water sales, there's a lot of numbers on this and a lot of lines. Bottom line here is that our water sales are being generated from member agencies. Water Resources works closely with each agency to survey demands. Last year, we had an April survey that was used as the foundation for the rates that were adopted in July. Water Resources continues to survey throughout the year. In November, that line actually decreased a little bit in terms of the projections from the member agencies. Not spending too much time here, but at the end of February, a new survey was completed. We're going through those numbers now and confirming some things, and we're looking for the effects of the March rainfall because the February survey was done ahead of the recent rainfalls. So we'll see how that lands. But at the end of the day, the takeaway here is that demands, as they always have, is really the biggest driver here of rates. If we have high sales environments, that's going to be a low rate environment. If we have a low rate environment, then it's going to be more or less, if it's a low demand environment, then that's going to be really what's reflected in the roadmap and the placeholder rates that you see. We are monitoring potential outside influences on the financials. Leanna touched on this. The market conditions are uncertain, to say the least, whether that's inflation, tariffs, the effects on the economy at large, what the Federal Reserve is going to do as we go forward. If you recall last year, one of the rate levers that was pulled was this $19 million grant that was received or awarded by the federal government for the intake project. We have yet to receive those funds, and so there is questions that we have. We still expect those funds, but until it's in our checking account, I don't think we're going to be very comfortable. Water demands and sales will be a big driver here. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Marie now to talk about some of the financial policies items. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get to that full presentation, but we've pulled some slides forward.
Thank you, Pierce, and good morning, everybody. It was asked for me to accelerate the policy discussion at the board officers and chairs just so we can get to it as a part of the rate and charges discussion. So there's really three takeaways that I want you to just keep in mind as the board deliberates the notion of changing the policies. Number one, the rating agencies have made it clear that financial performance is essential, and our current financial metrics that they expect of us are at the low end of their expectations. So that's a key takeaway. The second takeaway is that the Water Authority and the ratepayers have immeasurably benefited from the current policies by how we get the lowest cost of capital when we issue debt and how we achieve the greatest savings when we refinance debt. Over the last 10 years, we have protected the ratepayers from almost $190 million. And where does that number show up? It shows up in that pie chart that Leanna showed, that 19% number. We currently pay $179 million every year. So if we have an opportunity to refinance, that number can go down. And we've been able to do that over the years. The last takeaway is that it's really up to the board to really deliberate. Should they weaken these policies? Should they strengthen the policies or maintain the policies? It really is the board's pleasure, and the staff is more than happy to work with you on changing any of these policies. But the critical notion is that there's give and take. There's consequences of weakening the policies. There's benefits for strengthening the policies. And if you do a short-term policy change, there's going to be potentially a long-term cost. And I'm going to get into that. Next slide. So these are some of the financings that we've done to refinance our current debt. And to get to Director Ray's comment, when we refinance long-term debt, we do not extend the debt to a longer maturity date. The maturity date remains the same, and the amount that we owe is reduced because we have a lower interest cost associated with that debt. So I want to be clear that we do not extend our debt. However, on the short-term paper, we do, when we restructure it, we don't necessarily pay down that debt every year. And that's why it could be somewhat confusing. And the reason why we don't pay commercial paper every year on an annual basis is because the interest rates are 3 to 4% lower than the fixed rate. And so that way we can use our cash to pay the long-term debt. And that's been the strategy, and it's an overall financial strategy at this agency, among others. But Pierce can show you how we do pay down commercial paper in series, in tranches. Not every year, but every so often we pay it down when it makes sense. So Pierce, you want to just go through that slide?
Yeah, so this was pulled ahead from the next agenda item. When we take a look at our commercial paper program, this is exactly what Lisa Marie mentioned. We originally had a commercial paper program of up to $460 million. That's been reduced to $245 million where it stands now. Those programs aren't paid down. This vehicle is a little bit different than our long-term debt. You do not have a principal payment that needs to be made on it. It's just kind of a floating balance. That is very beneficial to kind of having that short-term access to the rate market. But we have, over time, as our CIP needs have changed, our infrastructure needs have changed, we have certainly reduced that in relatively large tranches. Every time whether it's a 3-year commercial paper program or something like that, we come back to the board, and part of the analysis of, do we restructure it again? Do we fix it out? All of those are always analyzed with our financial advisors in terms of what is anticipated in the market, what's anticipated in terms of the board policies of paying down commercial paper, paying down debt. This board always has the ability to pay down debt faster. There is just a rate impact of doing so.
Thank you. We have a quick question, Pierce.
Please.
Director Leahy.
Thank you. Since we're on this topic and we've moved it up, I did want to ask a couple questions. So the commercial paper series that we currently have, what did that debt originally pay for? So I'm aware that has been refunded or reissued a few times now, and most, or I think there's almost $250 million that has been interest only through the duration. So did that pay for capital projects? Did that pay for operating expenses? What did that pay for?
Yes, it's our debt is always paying for capital. And so in that sense, it's always been for capital and CIP. And in terms of once debt is issued, everything kind of goes into the weighted cost mix. So if there's a single thing that continues to roll over, it doesn't have a rate impact because all of it gets blended at the end of the day.
So my concern is understanding that this is for capital and it's not shown on our debt service schedule. We don't actually see what the plan is to pay it off. So typically with long-term debt issuances, you're issuing the debt for capital to pay it off over the lifespan of the asset. And so my concern with continuing to pay this as an interest only, and this would be my recommendation to the ANF committee as well as the board, would be to develop that short-term debt policy to ensure that either A, we're paying off that short-term debt within the lifetime of the asset. But my concern is if we're refinancing or refunding this series over and over for 10 years, let's say, for example, and then we refinance it and roll it into a long-term debt issuance that now has a 30-year payoff term. We've now been paying on that debt for 40 years as opposed to, let's say, 30 years. And now there may not be that financial benefit of the lower interest savings because we've paid on that for so long. And so my request would, one, to be make sure that we have a short-term debt issuance policy that outlines that that debt is paid off within the lifespan of the asset. So, 30 years or whatever it might be, with our kind of aligning with our long-term debt policy. And then also making sure that if it is rolled into a long-term debt, that it doesn't extend that lifespan. Maybe we do need to have the conversation. I know when we reissue this debt on the commercial paper, it does increase in rates in the interest rate, but it may still be lower than the long-term debt. So maybe that's a conversation that the board wants to have of whether or not we want to play that game. But my concern is, and how it ties to the rate structure or our rate hearing, is we're always sensitive to the drivers of the market, and in this commercial paper seems to be the one that's most influenced by that financial state of the water authority and that rating. And so I want to make sure that the board is aware that this is that tranche of money and debt that is most vulnerable. And we do not currently have a financial policy in debt management addressing our short-term debt. It only addresses and establishes our long-term debt. So this is something that, again, I'm asking for, that we have something like that, and maybe we could get more specific and see a draft policy. But I would want to see that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Leahy. Pierce, please continue the presentation.
Thank you. So in terms of the cost of downgrades, we've provided this in prior presentations. This has been updated to reflect the current landscape as we see it in that anticipated 26. But a downgrade of a single level would be about $38 million of cost over that time. So it's not a $30 million one-time impact. It is just a annual cost of about $1.5 or so million in increased interest costs, just purely interest expenses, no additional benefit to the ratepayer. We do have a lot of market activity, so it's not just the commercial paper program. That is coming to the board later this year, in the next month or so. But we do have that anticipated 26 debt issue. There are some refundings that can occur, the redemption of the 98As, a lot of different activity. So in terms of the sensitivity to protect that rating and limit costs in the near term, there are, hundreds of millions of dollars of activity that is anticipated here in the near future. When we take a look at our metrics, we've also shown this before, that our metrics, as viewed by the rating agencies, are on the low end. The targets are on the low end. The numbers that we actually have are on the low end of what is typically seen from median AAA, AA, or even single A agencies. Even amongst our peer agencies, Metropolitan, East Bay MUD, LADWP, our metrics are generally weaker in terms of how much coverage we have or how leveraged that existing financing is. In terms of what we can do, we anticipated having a third item on financial policies. We've had two prior conversations in terms of looking at all the funds, the flow of funds, and the various policies and benchmarks that we have. The staff is open to modifying all of those in terms of whatever is the direction provided by the board, we're happy to do so, just understanding that there's always going to be kind of a balancing act of short-term, mid-term, long-term repercussions. Sometimes that's rate savings, sometimes that's rates increases. So we're happy to look at that, but we'll be doing so in a holistic manner, and so just look for board direction on those items. In summary here, we're looking at just some of the major issues that we have. We've done a lot before. We've turned over a lot of those stones already, not necessarily available here in the short term. The Rate Stabilization Fund was mentioned earlier in terms of, it's sitting at its minimum policy. Can we use it? The board absolutely can continue to use the Rate Stabilization Fund. I think last month there were some comments in terms of bifurcating that Rate Stabilization Fund into different nomenclatures to help clarify that. The existing policy allows the board to dip below policy, but it just has to have a replenishment plan in terms of having an expectation that you can use those funds, you just need to replenish those within a 3-year window. MWD continues to have large increases. Despite not buying much water from Metropolitan, we do see large increases on the exchange components of that. That does impact 277,000 acre feet of our deliveries. An 8% rate adoption is already approved and adopted for calendar 26. They're forecasting an 18% increase in calendar 27, followed by a 12% in 28. These are large numbers. These are their forecasts. They can change. They will change. They have rate design modifications that they're also looking to do. So a lot of headwinds from Metropolitan as they face many of the same challenges. At the end of the day, the objective here is to really balance the financial and the system risk over the short and long term. We will be coming back to this board and this committee many times.
All right, I'd like to call the formal Board of Directors meeting to order at 11:04. Today's meeting is conducted in person with one board member, Director Leahy, participating remotely. Director Leahy has posted the agenda at her remote location, which is accessible to the public, so you're welcome to stop by and say hello. With that, all voting today will be called via roll call. As we move through our agenda, I will be moderating requests to speak. To request to speak, please press the speaker button at your seat or raise your hand on Zoom if participating remotely. There are also 4 exits on this aircraft. Sorry, that does feel like a flight attendant's like speaking to me. Yeah. We will move to our salute to the flag. Director Macedo, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Director Macedo. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll and announce whether a quorum is present?
Director Acosta. Here. Vice Chair Hilliker. Here. Director Quaylen.
Here.
Director Buckowitz is absent. Director Steiner is absent. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Here.
Flessy.
Here.
Yamani.
Here.
Director Ike is absent. Fong Sakai.
Present.
Vespi. Arant. Here. Katz.
Here.
Leahy.
Here.
Heidemann.
Here.
Macedo.
Here.
Whitburn.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Pohl.
Yes, present.
Myers. Norman. Here. Director Murdaffer is absent. Director Ray.
Here.
Secretary Lyons is absent. Director Hedberg. Here. Sorry, Coates Hedberg. Croucher.
Here.
Wall.
Here.
Molina. Here. Freehoff.
Here.
Supervisor Desmond is absent. Director Scalzetti.
Here.
Roback.
Present.
Abdullahi.
Present.
Chair Serrano.
Here.
Director Castaneda.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Do we have any proxies today?
We have one proxy today. Director Freehoff is the proxy for Secretary Lyons.
Duly noted. Item 4 is public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board on items of interest within the subject matter of the board of directors. Each public speaker will be given up to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, do we have any public speakers?
We have a number of speakers today. First will be our in-person requests. Ms. Rhonda, are you in the room? Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak and may begin now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm Rhonda Farrar. I'm president and founder of the Friends of Lake Hodges, and I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce the Friends of Lake Hodges to those of you who don't know us already. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization whose mission is to support local government efforts to improve Lake Hodges Dam safety, capacity, water quality, wildlife habitat, and public access for the benefit of the community. As you all are aware, I'm sure, Lake Hodges is the oldest dam in the state of California, and right now it's being restricted to less than 20% of its capacity because it needs to be replaced. Billions of gallons of free water coming from the sky are going out to the sea, and unfortunately, the significant investment that we have in the pump storage facility is not operating. So Lake Hodges, as I'm sure you're aware, is very important to our community. It is an iconic birdwatching haven for people coming from around the world to see our iconic grebes. If you haven't caught the recent BBC and PBS series on the that feature our grebes, I encourage you to watch. They're amazing. They're amazing birds, as well as part of the 270 bird species out at the lake. Bass fishermen come from all over the world. Bass fish, or had done when the lake was at capacity, and that's severely impacted with the lake level being so low. Hikers, bikers, walkers come from all over in our community. It's an important part of our community, as well as our community of wildlife. We, as the Friends of Lake Hodges, have been meeting with all the local many of the local, city, state, and federal officials regarding the dam replacement project. Congressman Levin and Peterson have both volunteered to co-host stakeholder meetings to help us all collaborate on working towards getting the dam replaced as expeditiously as possible. We have an advisory board at the Friends of Lake Hodges that include the Sierra Club, Audubon Society, and other local community groups that will be important in the CEQA review process. And we are also available to assist and collaborate with all the organizations that will be involved in creating this new dam, and also helping with writing grant letter applications and so forth. We are behind you all, we are supporting you all, and we look forward to getting the dam replaced as soon as possible. I hope you learned a little bit more about the Friends of Lake Hodges, why we're here, and how we'd like to work with you all to get our new dam replaced by the state mandate, construction to begin by the state mandate in 2029. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. Very much appreciate it. And if you're free for our next event is Lake Hodges Cleanup on April 27th. We have an Earth Day event, and we'd like to personally invite you to our Jam for the Dam, which is our friend-raiser event. It's a wine tasting music festival in October. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Our second speaker is Ms. Groot. Sorry, Mr. Groot. You have 3 minutes. Please begin now.
I get that a lot. Well, thank you. I just wanted to take a few minutes to introduce myself. My name is Dana Groot, president currently of the San Diego County Farm Bureau. We represent about 1,100 farmers in the county. We are still the fourth largest economic driver of activity in the county at about $1.8 billion in gate value. I wanted to thank you all for your support of the discounted ag rate, the PSAR program, for decades of support of agriculture. Agriculture has an interdependent relationship with the County Water Authority. We still consume about 13,000 to 15,000 acre feet of water every year. and it's very beneficial for the water authority to have that water sales, and that the benefit is also provides reliability and options for lower levels of service as well as reliability and service. So we look forward to working with you in the future as you deliberate over your budget and your other considerations, and look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. If there are public speakers in the Zoom waiting room, please raise your hand through the Zoom app or press *9 if listening by phone. I have one speaker request, Mr. Espinosa. You have 3 minutes to speak, and you may begin now.
Hello, good morning. My name is Marco Espinosa. First time I've ever attended the San Diego County Water District Authority, meeting. I was going to the other page to make sure I was saying the name correctly. Like I said, born and raised here in San Diego, so I apologize if I am a little nervous. Again, first time I've attended this meeting. The only thing I really wanted to bring up, sorry for taking so much of your time, was that on today's agenda, on the online link, of course, there are, in the very first 2 pages, there are 3 links, in blue, 2 to go to the website and then see the live view there, and the other one for the Zoom link. Now, when you click on the website link, the blue ones, they open up the next page. It works. However, when you click on the blue for the Zoom link, it doesn't work, and so you have to go into the Zoom app, and you also can't copy and paste, which I know I was trying to. I don't know if it's just my phone or whatnot. I use everything, but I could not copy off of that document to then easily just put it into the Zoom to then join the meeting virtually, of course. I know it sounds so rudimentary, but in terms of public participation, that is one small thing that could be changed just to make it easier. Because as someone who's first time attending this meeting, correct? And as odd as these things are, and most people just don't go to the meetings. I get it. Most people don't participate. But for those who do, if the smallest of things can be made for better and more public participation, I think that's good in all aspects of just a democracy. And so if that could be changed, I'm not the IT person. I don't know who the IT person is. But if that is a change, but I look forward to continuing to watch the meetings. Water is obviously, of course, super, super important. It's a source of life. I think the funny joke in the room is no one has to worry about money in this room, because that's always, as long as you have water, you have money. But anyway,
you have 30 seconds remaining. Please wrap up your comments.
Thank you. Sorry, I apologize. Thank you for the notice, because there was no timer, matter of fact. But that would be helpful if there was one. Anyways, yes, thank you very much, and have a nice day. I will be watching online. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for your comments. I see no further requests to speak, Chair Serrano.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I would just ask staff to take a look at the agenda to make sure that any of those concerns are addressed. Thank you. Item 5 is additions to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda?
There are no additions.
All right. Item 6 is our approval of minutes. Before the board today is the minutes from the formal Board of Directors meeting of February 27th, 2024. I have a motion by Director Scalzetti. Second. A second by Director Ray. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Acosta?
Yes.
Coates Hedberg?
Yes.
Leahy?
I had my hand raised. I had a comment. Some comments I had made in the A&F committee for item 4B were not reflected in the minutes, and I wanted to make sure that they were added. It was about additions to the work plan.
Thank you. I've made a note of that comment.
Thank you. And then yes.
Are you voting yes on the remainder with the administrative change?
Yes, with the administrative change.
Thank you. Director Quaylen.
Yes.
Abdullahi.
Yes.
Chair Serrano.
Yes.
Freehoff. Director
Yes.
Freehoff. Miller.
Yes.
Flessy.
Yes.
Scalzetti.
Yes.
Myers.
Yes.
Heidemann.
Yes.
Fong Sakai. Vespi.
Yes.
Castaneda.
Yes.
Ray.
Yes.
Katz.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker.
Yes.
Director Croucher.
Yes.
Norman.
Yes.
Macedo.
Yes.
Whitburn.
Yes.
Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Yamani.
Yes.
Roback.
Yes.
Wall. Molina.
I will abstain since I wasn't here.
Director Lyons. Sorry, is absent. Director Arant.
Yes.
Thank you. And vote passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, our presentations and public hearing. Item 7A is a much anticipated, long awaited. I have the privilege of announcing the appointment of Director Venus Molina, representing the city of San Diego. Director Molina is the chief of staff to City Council member Jennifer Campbell and has an extensive public service and policy background. So I am grateful that she would be willing to dedicate some of her time here at the Water Authority. Welcome to the board, Director Molina. I will now turn it over to you for any comments.
Thank you. And they usually say go big or go home, so I decided to start my first day on a budget day. So thank you. And I figured if I started today and I came back next month, I will be staying forever. So I appreciate everybody's kindness, and now I see why. Thank you, and I'm excited to be here and to serve.
Thank you, Director Molina. Welcome. I'd also like to extend a welcome to Director Flessy, who I know joined us last month virtually, but is here in person in the boardroom. Welcome, Director Flessy. We're all excited to work with you as well. Okay, we will move into item 8, which is our report by chairs. I struggled with where to put this in my report, but I do have the unfortunate duty to inform and more importantly, extend our condolences to Secretary Lyons. Some of you may know her husband, Rob, passed away last Friday after a year-long battle with cancer. Secretary Lyons had just recently taken a leave of absence to be with and help take care of him. And as I shared with Secretary Lyons when she provided this unfortunate update to me, I know no words will be able to fully express my condolences to her and her family during this time, and I know that that sentiment is shared by everyone on this board. She did ask me to share that there will be a celebration of life on April 26th, and if you would like more information or would like to attend, please email or to text her directly. Secretary Lyons, our hearts are with you and your family, and I know that we look forward to seeing you whenever you're ready. Moving on, you may have noticed this morning that we have a new display screen for our voting system. This project was done in response to requests from this board. The newly upgraded board voting system has our administrative services team under the leadership and direction of Jason Foster, Matt Bartolome, and Eric Birkland. Over the past several months, staff completed a full overhaul featuring a modern, user-friendly interface, updated and improved software code, and a robust new server for improved reliability and security. By completing this project internally, substantial cost savings were achieved compared to commercial or contracted solutions. Ongoing maintenance and upgrades will all be handled in-house. Beyond the visible improvements you'll notice on screen, several features have been added that are designed to make the board voting processes smoother, more transparent, and easier to manage. We hope these enhancements will greatly improve your voting experience and support staff in meeting our shared goals of operational excellence and transparency. How about a hand for our administrative team? I saw all you noticed that this morning. Everybody was looking at me like, how great is that? Great from where I sit. In other news, please note that due to scheduling conflicts, the Imperial Valley Tour has been postponed and will not take place on April 10th as previously announced. The tour will most likely be scheduled for fall, and the board will be kept informed of details as they are confirmed. Also, as another programming note, as a reminder, there are 2 special administrative and finance committee meetings scheduled on April 29 and 30 for budget workshops. The meetings will be from 9 to 11:30 a.m., and I encourage you all to attend. That concludes my chair's report, and go Padres. All right, item 8B is the report of committee actions. Madam Clerk, will you please provide a report, the report of action taken today by the Administrative and Finance Committee?
Yes, Administrative and Finance Committee noted and filed the monthly Treasurer's report, and they authorized a contract to DCSE Inc. for a period of 2 years with an option to extend an additional 2 years for a not-to-exceed amount of $220,000. That concludes the report.
Thank you. That brings us to item 9, which is our consent calendar. Before we proceed with voting on the consent calendar, I wanted to ask committee chairs for any comments on the work plans that are included on today's consent calendar. And
All right, thank you so much, Chair Serrano. In Finance, reviewing and approving the multi-year budget for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. This is the highlights of our work plan. What it includes: reviewing and approving rates and charges for calendar years 2026 and 2027, reviewing the long-range financial plan with an eye toward addressing impacts of reduced water sales and diversifying revenue sources, and reviewing debt management strategies and opportunities for debt reduction. And when it comes to business support, we're going to be reviewing and approving initiatives related to cybersecurity, safety and risk management, and supporting sustainable and efficient work environments and processes. And then when it comes to human resources, we are scheduled to negotiate and approve a new MOU with our bargaining groups in 2026.
Thank you, Director Ray, for E&O.
Thank you, Chair Serrano. This month's formal board consent includes the adoption of the final Engineering and Operations Committee work plan for the 2025 and 2026 calendar years. The work plan was presented at the February meeting and committee meeting, and we sought feedback. The final work plan and cover memo starts on page 179 of the packet in this month's board packet. The Engineering and Operations Committee will provide progress reports on the work plan annually at the end of each calendar year.
Thank you. Director Myers for Imported Water.
Thank you. The Imported Water Committee work plan starts at page 183. It was introduced at last month's meeting, and there were no changes made or no additional suggestions made to that work plan at that time. It will cover the calendar years of 25 and 26 as well. The work plan is aligned with the Water Authority's goals and policies and priorities with respect to long-term sustainability, including adding issues and really emphasizing water transfers and the other priorities that we're hoping to move forward with in the next couple of years. It also supports and recognizes the combining of the two divisions, Colorado River and MWD, into one department that improves efficiency, communication, working together, that I think will really have. And so if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to sit down and talk. Otherwise, I recommend that the board approve its adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Macedo for Legislation and Public Outreach.
Yeah, thank you. The LPO work plan for calendar year 2025 and 2026 prioritizes the following efforts: reviewing and providing input on, revising and considering approval of streamlined legislative policy guidelines for the following calendar year, engaging and collaborating with member agencies on legislative positions and advocacy priorities, along with outreach and education programs for our region, maintaining outreach programs that support board policies through a broad range of activities that include regular Citizens Water Academy events, and also evaluating the Water Authority's role in the community by bringing people together to work on regional water issues, including affordability and reliability. And I recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Miller for Water Planning.
Thank you, Chair. This month's agenda includes adopting the final Water Planning Environmental Committee work plan for calendar years 25 and 26. The final work plan and cover memo starts on page 190 of your monthly board packet and covers water management planning, drought response management, environmental management, facilities planning, and water use efficiency. The committee will provide progress reports on the work plan at the end of each year, And I believe a little later in this meeting, Jeremy Crutchfield will do a short presentation on the master plan. Thank you.
I have a hand from Director Leahy.
Thank you. I did want to pull item 9.1 from the consent calendar. As I mentioned during the minutes, there was a comment and a request to add an item to the work plan. At the request of our chair and vice chair, if they agree, I would like to amend the recommendation to include a task of completing the comprehensive rate structure review by 2027. I know that this process is primarily going to be done within the general manager's work group, but I think it is important for the A&F committee to be tracking this item as part of the work plan, and ultimately the committee will be involved in this effort after the recommendations come back from the general manager's work group. So I'd like to ask that this is added to the work plan if our chair and vice chair agree. And then that would be my request and motion to approve item 9.1. Also, just as maybe a logistics thing, if there's a request to be added or have content added to an item, I think it would be helpful if it's not going to be included in the future that there's a follow-up either with staff and maybe the chairs of the committees to have an understanding of either A, why it wasn't, or just to see if it fell off on accident. So I would respectfully ask that that follow-up occur in the future.
All right, Director Leahy is requested to pull the A&F work plan, so I will remove that from the consent calendar. We will take that after the consent calendar is approved or not. So we will consider that item pulled. With that, I will entertain a motion for the balance of the consent calendar.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. I have a motion from Director Croucher, a second by Director Yamani. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? To be clear, you are voting on the balance of the consent calendar minus the A&F work plan, which we will take separately.
And for clarification, so today's vote will be 9.2 through 9.11. Director Acosta?
Yes.
Coates Hedberg? Yes. Leahy?
Yes.
Quaylen?
Yes.
Abdullahi?
Yes.
Chair Serrano?
Yes.
Director Freehoff?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Flessy?
Yes.
Skelzetti?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Heidemann?
Yes.
Fong Sakai?
Aye.
Vespi?
Yes.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Katz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker?
Yes.
Director Croucher?
Yes.
Norman?
Yes.
Macedo?
Yes.
Whitburn?
Yes.
Boyd Hodgson?
Yes.
Paul?
Paul is a no on 9.7, 9.10, and 9.11. Yes on the other items.
Thank you. We'll make that note. Director Yamani?
Yes.
Roback?
Yes.
Wall?
Yes.
Molina? Yes. And Arant? Yes. Thank you. The item passes.
Thank you. Going back to item 9.1, the Administrative and Finance Committee work plan. Director Leahy, do you want to speak to your motion one more time?
Thank you. I would like to make an item to the work plan that includes completing a comprehensive rate structure review by 2027.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
So I have a motion by Director Leahy, a second by Director Castaneda. Any discussion?
Well, I would have seconded it, but Scalzetti beat me to the punch.
Oh, okay. So was it Scalzetti? Your voice sounds the same. So a motion by Director Leahy, a second by Director Scalzetti. Director Fong Sakai.
My question is whether there's any potential ramifications if we were to delay this.
If we were to delay the work plan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Staff?
No, no ramifications if the board desires to delay action on this item.
I do have a motion on the floor with a second. Any further discussion?
Can I add that the item I'm asking to add was also approved by the board during the interim rate design item last month. The item that was the very long-winded motion, and my neighbor, Director Abdullahi, asked me to repeat multiple times. So this has already been approved by the board. I'm just asking that it's also added to the work plan of the committee.
Okay, understood. Director Freehoff.
Great, thank you. The one comment I have is I just looked at those conditions or considerations. One of the things it said after that item, it said complete a comprehensive rate structure review by December 2027 or feasible date. I guess I have concerns about that December 2027. You know, I know it's always good to have a deadline because that's how you make things happen. But I'm just concerned about locking ourselves in. I like that or feasible date part that was included initially. That's just my comment.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All right, I have a motion by Director Leahy, a second by Director Scalzetti. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Director Acosta?
Yes.
Coates Hedberg?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yes.
Quaylen?
Yes.
Abdullahi?
Yes.
Chair Serrano?
Yes.
Director Freehoff?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Flessy?
Yes.
Scalzetti?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Heidemann?
Yes.
Fong Sakai?
Aye.
Vespi?
Yes.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Katz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hilliker?
Yes.
Director Croucher?
Yes.
Norman?
Yes.
Macedo?
Yes.
Whitburn?
Yes.
Boyd Hodgson?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Yamani?
Yes.
Roback?
Yes.
Wall?
Yes.
Molina?
Yes.
And Director Arant?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to action discussion information. As I announced at the beginning of the meeting today, item 10.1, the final 2024 Water Facilities Master Plan will be continued until next month. Item 11 is information items. There are 4 information items included in today's packet. Please refer to the board packet for the detailed reports. Item 12 is special reports. General Manager.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. General Counsel.
Nothing to report.
Secretary Lines is absent for the Sandag report. Moving to Sandag subcommittees. Director Macedo, Borders Committee.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Director Yamani, Regional Planning.
No
Thank you.
reportable item.
Thank you very much. Any directors have an AB 1234 compliance report? Director Arant.
Brief comment. Under information on item 11.1, we've been advised that there needs to be an emergency repair of Pipeline 4 near Doolin Road. This piece of pipe has experienced rapid wire breaks, and there's concern that given the high operating pressures that it could blow up. Just 2 things. One, this will have a significant impact on my agency. We'll lose access to 2 connections for an extended shutdown. So essentially, my growers will be interruptible during that period of time. And the other thing, too, is this just underscores the importance of us staying on top of reinvesting in our aqueduct system, because these things happen up and down the aqueducts as they age. We need to stay on top and stay ahead of these issues if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Arant. And to that point, the board officers and committee chairs were briefed on this urgent need for repair just earlier this week, and there will be an item for board consideration next month. I have a hand from Director Coates Hedberg.
Thank you, Chair. This is just a quick report from the Water Conservation Garden. We did have our draft budget review this week, and you, all the members of the County Water Authority, should receive by tomorrow a copy of a letter requesting rescinding the withdrawal, as well as a summary of the future draft budget. So, thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much. We have no closed session items. There being no further business before the Board of Directors, this concludes our broadcast day, and the meeting is now adjourned.